All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today we got an open panel discussing who is winning the culture war. So shout out to Andrew and all the Crucible crew. Welcome over here. Really appreciate the raid, Andrew. I'm getting ready to post the link right here in the live chat, and I'll post it in the video description as well. This is a open panel, so anybody is welcome to hop on. I just ask that you, again, stay within the bounds of TOS. We've had a few people get a little wild. So today, a lot of things are happening in culture. We've been seeing, I don't know if you guys follow the Harrison Butker explosion, backlash because of his promotion of traditional Catholic values. And so it's been interesting to see the last few days, the response. First, everybody's trying to get him kicked off the NFL team of the Kansas City Chiefs. And then it seemed like more and more people have kind of voiced support, teammates, his head coach. And that's just one example. Donald Trump, he recently had a rally in New Jersey and had like the largest rally in New Jersey history, almost 100,000 people. And so obviously, it seems like that the conservative movement is kind of winning the culture war to some degree. So I'm curious, again, what you guys have to say about it. What's your guys' opinions? I mean, who is winning the culture war? It seems like Biden support is dramatically decreasing. I don't know if you guys saw the commencement speech he recently gave at a HBCU college the other day, where he basically was saying that America hates black people and therefore you need to vote for Joe Biden. He also, what was the other thing? He mentioned that he was the vice president under Obama during the 2020 pandemic, and that Obama told him to go to Detroit. So it's just interesting to see the cultural phenomenons going on right now. But at the exact same time, the left controls all the institutions. And so this is why I think the conversation on who's really winning the culture war is worth discussing, because it seems like in the grassroots level, again, shout out to the Crucible crew. You look at Andrew going in and smashing all these people, the rise of these podcasts like the Whatever and Fresh and Fit and the Manosphere and Rollo Tomasi and the Red Pill. Seems like that's kind of the leading edge of culture. Yet when we look at the institutional power, we don't tend to really have any. I mean, the military used to be the military, but look at who's running the military. We got transgenders. We got furries. I don't know if you saw one of the Air Force officials who literally was wearing like a dog mask in his official photo. I mean, what the hell is going on? So it's like, even though we are winning at the grassroots level, we really don't control any institution in the United States. So yeah, exactly. We got to fix it. BP Keys talking about the military. I mean, our military, I mean, it's sad, like we look, I mean, during the Biden administration, they want to build cockpits and fighter planes for pregnant women. What? You look at Russia, and I've talked about this before, that Putin has an agenda to actually increase the military to about 1.5 million soldiers. And those are all men. And the same thing with China. And, China has tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of potential soldiers. A fourth of the world is in China. And you look at the United States, and our military is weak. Our national morale is terrible. And so who is winning the culture war? So guys, smash that like. And here is the links for anybody to jump on, voice your opinion. What are your thoughts on the culture war? Who's winning it? What should we do? Waiting on anybody who would want to join. Please do so. And so that link is available. Let me post that in the video description as well for everybody. Join the link. join the stream with this link. And so tomorrow, guys, I will be off, but Wednesday we have Father Peter Here's coming on to discuss Orthodox prophecy in the end times. That's going to be a fascinating live stream. So I hope you guys are able to make that Wednesday. It should be at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got I-Fi White or YT. What's going on, brother?
Oh, not much. I heard you wanted to talk about politics, so here I am.
Yes. What are your thoughts? So the topic today is who is winning the culture war? Again, so many things are going on. And my premise is it seems like, and maybe you have a different opinion, that to some degree we are winning at the grassroots level. I mean, when we're talking about memetics, memes, the whole Trump phenomenon since 2016. But when it comes to institutional power, it doesn't seem like we have much of that. So what are your thoughts?
First of all, YT's YouTube. It's just a short for YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube channel. So it depends on how you define the left and right wing. I don't even humor the uniparty anymore. There is no right wing anymore. It's dead.
Agreed.
In this country.
Agreed.
So the only question is the culture war being won by the extreme left wing or the centrist left wing? And so I think the centrist left wing is creating the illusion that there's still some sort of right wing pushback at all in this country, which again, like I said, doesn't exist.
Right.
And so if you ask any Republican, by the way, recently, like in the past 2 years or so, do you think the country will ever recover, like back to the right wing that we built it upon? They won't even humor the idea that there is a right wing pushback. The only question is, do you want to go left wing really fast or really slow? So
exactly.
That's the only two choices. And these are Republicans. These
Right.
are people who vote for Trump and think that their vote matters. And so when you have
I agree with all that. So whether it be the uniparty, my general consensus, that's why I brought up the Harrison Butker is and even with Christianity, I'm Orthodox, and I know
I'm one of those filthy Protestants, by the way.
Protestants.
Just FYI.
Well, God bless you anyways. But just traditional Christianity, as we saw with the Butker, that is totally under attack, and even from supposed right-wing people.
Once again, I don't think this is definitely not a Christian nation anymore. I don't think
Agreed.
that's
I made that point as well.
Agreed. Anymore. Is it possible to return it to something that resembles a Christian nation? That's pretty optimistic if you ask me, because I think there's a lot of people that are like following like Nick Fuentes or the Crucible or whatever, and think that we're going to turn this around any minute, guys. We just need some more votes and clicks or whatever. And meanwhile, I think the war has been lost long time ago. Like, it's not even kind of slowing down. Like, it's going so rapidly secular that the ones that kind of identify as Christian, I don't think are really even Christian anymore. I think most self-identifying Christians in modern day contexts are those spiritual but not religious churches, that just kind of tolerate anything and everything, including like devil worship and shit like that. Sorry, I don't know if you can curse on here, but anyways, again, the culture's completely lost, religion's completely lost. All the fundamental values of like capitalism, that's gone. Libertarian freedoms, that's gone. We're just in a pure authoritarian socialist devil worshipping regime now, and it's just going faster and faster every day. That's the only choice.
Before I bring in Chaborn, not sure, I probably mispronounced that. Okay. What are your thoughts, I-Fi, on whatever the resistance to this degeneracy is? Because I agree with you. I think America is over in regards to the enterprise and the empire that was set to be, and the whole collapse is underway. I think a civil war seems to be probably imminent. But what do you see as any resistance? Because that was kind of my thoughts with, again, the Harrison thing and even the rise of, whatever you might deem conservative or right-wing content seems to be the sort of leading edge of younger people. So outside the purview of boomers or even Gen Xers, but millennials and Gen Zers seem to be on that bandwagon. What are your thoughts on is there a resistance? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Again, dead and gone. It's sort of like asking the question, where is the middle class in America? They're dead and gone.
That is annihilated.
They are extinct, and that you can read about them in history books, but you're not going to find them anymore. And it's the same thing with actual Christian communities in the United States, and the same thing with libertarian capitalists in the country. They're just dead and gone. There are no more. So the fight back is random weirdos like myself who has like 30 subscribers on YouTube. Like, there's the resistance for you, brother. Any second now we're gonna start the revolution and we'll take this country back. But anyways, I don't know if you're a fan of like the Amish philosophy of like isolation and an alternative lifestyle where you try to like live peacefully within a shitty government. And so I did it again. Are we allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, you can. I mean,
okay. I'll try to refrain.
Yeah.
A crappy government.
Right.
The crappy government being the only choice. The Amish have chosen to just live amongst themselves and isolated and off grid and self sufficient, so that they only interact with the United States when absolutely required. And so I would recommend a similar situation, except maybe with a little more technology. I kind of like my computers and cell phones, so I don't have anything against technology, but and if you do, that's fine. You can start your own little community of like anti-technology, just like the Amish.
Right.
But I'm
It
definitely not.
definitely is moving towards the local level. I think that is the only response to the coming collapse.
Unfortunately, like you just pointed out, if there is a civil war, I don't think they're going to affect the war much. If anything, if anything, they're just going to passively watch and wait and see who survives or whatever. But I doubt they're going to get involved. And likewise,
who's they specifically?
Amish people.
Oh yeah.
And similarly, even if you had these like peaceful little Christian communities pop up, same problem. You're not going to have a lot of like military resistance against like a totalitarian regime or whatever, which again,
Right.
we're already going down that road. So the most optimistic miracle you can pray for at this point is a little country I call Conservataria. I'm the new emperor. So you can come join me with your little homestead. We can trade sheep and gold bars and stuff like that, and
Right.
and then at least provide American citizens with an alternative that's not just straight up Amish or straight up, the Uniparty that is their only
Right.
choice at the moment.
Absolutely.
That's my 2 cents.
Hey, well, I appreciate. I pretty much agree with really most of your take. Born, you're the next one up. So on the topic of the culture war, who's winning it? I'm curious. What are your thoughts, man?
I think the culture war is kind of like it's disintegrating. I think we're winning it though. We as in like people who don't stand on the bullshit issues. I think more and more people are just like they have a common understanding of what the bullshit is.
Right.
And what we have to verbally and cognitively dig ourselves out of every morning because there's people yapping on about these dead concepts that really are just meant to manipulate the masses into a state of emotional distress. I mean, that's the spiritual angle. It's like, God's winning the cultural war. To use a kind of an American phrasing.
Well, that's kind of what my point was with the Christianity. Is it does seem like, especially amongst the millennials and the Gen Z, a lot of people are coming back to some type of traditional faith. Obviously, I'm Orthodox, and the Orthodox is one of the fastest growing denominations in the United States because of the traditionality, and it's it doesn't change.
I'm aware of this phenomenon. I did kind of like early days get to know the what I saw earlier on the other podcast was like the ortho bros, right?
Right.
Which is like the kind of same argument that Julius Evola employs. Do you have any familiar with the Evola?
The traditionalist school. Yep, I'm familiar with all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm also a perennialist. I'm just a Norse pagan. You can laugh at that if you want to, but But yeah, Evola is very important for that. Of course, there might be a problem in terms of just like mix matching philosophy with poetry and then fragments of traditions that haven't had the same level of establishment as, for instance, the Orthodox or Catholic Church. But I have to just stand on what I know, and I don't know. I hope that it's funny with memes because there are a lot of LARPers and there are also a lot of like just like basic Protestants who just change the names and the pictures, and then it's basically just the church of the guy from the Avengers.
Right.
But and then you have this aspect of like the big scariness about, well, how do we conduct the rites if nature guides us, right? Then this idea of Satan comes, and it's like, one thing is carving a rune on an ancient tree, and another thing is like doing fucking meth and blood sacrifices in the sewers. And I think it kind of gets conflated a lot of the time, because I think orthobros and perennialists of all stripes, of all backgrounds and traditions, have more in common than we would have with like Jim Carrey and the fucking Hollywood cabal and all that garbage that
Yeah.
they poison the children with. I mean, that's going
Right.
to be the biggest challenge, getting the kids to know that it's all lies really quickly.
Right. Well, Nadam, Walter, what are your guys' thoughts on the topic? You guys disagree with everything being said?
I just joined. I didn't start watching from the beginning, but can give
Okay,
you my
so the
own
topic
perspective.
is who's winning the culture war, and
Yeah,
I
I know the
find.
topic.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
can give my own perspective if you want. Sure.
Well, yeah, that's the only one that we.
Okay.
That's the only one we care about.
Okay. So I don't think I don't think us as Orthodox we're losing the cultural war in any way possible. For example, I take the example of the US because there's a lot of converts. There's a lot of there's this big push on the Orthodox Church and on the rigorosity of the Orthodox Church, bringing back Christianity to its roots, putting it away from Protestantism, which created so much problems and allowed the possibility of atheism to come into the US and all the Western world. And yeah, I think we're not going to lose the cultural war. You
But
talk
what
a lot
about,
about
so
this.
just to push back, because obviously we're both Orthodox. I mean, look at Greece, for example, and their government allowing mass immigration for the first time. Like I have friends in Greece and Athens, so many Muslims that are downtown Athens that it's I've heard multiple Greeks complain about that here in the United States. So even though maybe conservative ideals or right-wing ideals are sort of celebrated culturally and mimetically, at the same time, in regards to a culture war, they're also totally changing the demographics, and we're not really doing anything to stop that. So if you could just kind of define, what do you mean that we're not losing the culture war? Because I agree with you that I agree with Taborn that really conservatism or right-wing ideals are the kind of leading edge, but we are losing in every important metric other than like memes online and X accounts.
Yeah. Okay, I need to explain more my view. So currently we are losing it currently, but I was getting to my point that you love to talk about, and I find it really interesting about the prophecies of the saints. And honestly, personally, I rely a lot on their prophecies, and I believe that we should work towards those prophecies, not just wait for them to happen, but we should work towards it. So as of the present, we're not where we have to be. Of course, we're far from it. But the hope is there, and there is signs of this hope. So you gave the example of Greece, the backlash of the church was as we Orthodox would have answered to those. So the church was very responsive of the issue that Greece, when they accepted the same-sex marriages. I think the church responded really well, and I think we can rely on the church.
So you're talking about the Greek church excommunicating MP and Greek politicians for supporting the legalization of gay marriage.
Exactly.
Right here, Andrew throws in a point: go to a college campus and your question will be answered. Well, I have been to a college campus, and that's why I think is interesting, because when you talk to young men at a college campus, they tend to agree with most of the views that are probably being promoted right now on this YouTube channel. You go to a college campus classroom, and the professors are absolutely going to be left of center. And you talk with young women, typically they're going to be left of center. So I don't know. There's a real dynamic even on the college campus, at least from my perspective and what I've seen. So
there is. So I'm still in college, and I know exactly
where at in college. Are you in the United States?
In London.
Oh, so shit. Okay.
So it's there's this like aspect of Islam and the aspect of the wokeism. So there's those two, and in London it's very obvious the Islam part, and the other one too. Like they take down English flags and put the Skittles flags, and you everywhere you go there's like Islamic readings anywhere. So it's that there's two massive problems there. So as of the West, socially it's losing, but I always point to Russia because I'm like I annoy the people around me a lot because I always talk about Russia.
No Western country has a culture like Russia. I mean,
exactly,
so I don't think that's an apple to apples comparison. But anyways, let's bring in Walter and then the Machine Lies. Welcome, Machine Lies. Good to see you, brother.
Hey,
Walter,
what's going on?
Walter, what's your thoughts?
Test. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, I see the culture war technically the same way as Andrew from The Crucible describes it. I think we just have to kind of wait it out and focus on raising the new generation. I'm quite young and 20, and I've noticed how people in my age group, the Zoomers, yes, that they, in a sense, really find the culture we live in now kind of repulsive, and especially among men. The girls, I wouldn't say so, but my prediction would be that a lot of young men will be alienated by today's culture. The more it advances, the more it progresses into that goal that will never be achieved. And I think that could create a certain outcome that we are looking forward to.
So you're an accelerationist?
Well, not really. I'm not for doing terrorist.
No, not terror, but just the essentially waiting for the collapse and then rebuilding on the other side.
Well, I think it's bound to happen. Even the prophecies say that. Even the prophecies say that.
Yeah, I did a whole stream, and America is going to be hit as one of the worst countries in the Great World War, World War III. Unfortunately, according to the prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking bad right now, but I see a lot of hope. And
do you think we're even going to have an election in November? Because that's another thing that I think is interesting. I want to get the Machine Lies and his thoughts, but I'll open this question up to the panel. Is what's going to happen in November? Because it seems obvious that the support for Biden is so low and the support for Trump again. And we all have criticisms of Trump. Trump's no savior. Nobody here is a MAGA boomer. But I mean, if they steal the election again, it's so obvious in 2024. It's either civil war or they just allow Trump to, go in there and just kind of use the rhetoric and not really change anything.
Can you steal a rigged election?
But what's the difference? They are rigged and they are fake, and we definitely know that. I mean, do you think that it was rigged in 2016?
They've been rigged for like over a century now. So again, it
Well,
doesn't matter who you vote for. The deep state determines who your president is going to
so
be.
you think the deep state wanted Trump to be president in 16?
They want you to think your vote matters and want you to get passionate about it so that you get distracted for voting for this person or that person. But the
I agree
outcome
with
is
that.
the
I mean,
same.
I agree, and I think the elections are fake. But I'm just curious: do you think the deep state, because based on your premise, do you think the deep state wanted Trump to win in 16?
Definitely, they want the back and forth dynamic to make you feel like you made a difference with your vote this time, and that's why you got to go out and vote, rock the vote, save your country. And
Right.
so they already picked both candidates for you, so it doesn't matter which one you
Absolutely.
vote for.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I mean, that's why we got 2 70-year-olds running in 2024.
You
The
think
machine.
there's ever been as
Go ahead.
many?
Go ahead.
Sorry for
No,
interrupting
go
you.
ahead.
But like on this perspective, though, it's like, since 1968, has there ever been as many fucking guys like us just doing stuff, thriving, and having platforms? You know, like this would have seemed pretty fucking obscure back in the day, maybe among some environments. But like the reason why, yeah, this is what I was gonna say. Um, I think a lot of women feel held hostage by the culture war because of their dads, who are like standard boomers who kind of want to be lefties, the Joe Biden dads,
Okay.
and European lefties from the 1968 are completely rabid. I mean, they're almost as rabid as the uni people, and they want to be as rabid as them.
Right.
And so there's like a pressure for everyone to conform because otherwise you're going to get ostracized real bad, and a lot of chicks can't handle that.
Right.
Like for real.
Machine Lies, you were next one up, and then we'll go to Based, Oracle, and Ortho Blaze.
Yeah, peace to you, David Patrick Harry, and also IFI and Base Oracle. Peace to you, brothers. I don't know anybody else on the panel, but the thing about it is that I think that whether you're a Muslim or Orthodox Christian, or even somebody who just reads Evola, like my friend up here,
Right.
you could basically agree that there's an attack from one basic level, and that's the monoculture. That comes from perennialism, mainly from the Prisca Theologica, that's coming from this, Aristotelian heresy. And really what it is that this really threatens to, infect the world through a monoculture based on an understanding of the way technology and nature and God function. They either misconstrue humans as God, nature as technology, nature as God, or something of the sort, where they mix up these terms, in order to obfuscate the problems that we face.
Right.
And in that, there's a new right and a new left emerging on a global scale, and it seems like through that, what I like to talk about is this new sort of right that's emerging based off of this accelerationism, that's kind of going in the more libertarian direction and talking about this kind of crypto currency state, this sort of mixture, which is also mixed into transhumanism. And then there's the Discordian push that's kind of more towards a sort of techno Gaianism, where they're trying to sort of return to nature through technology.
Right.
And that's kind of moving towards this, idea of pirate utopias and these kind of, neo-tribalism. And so I think there's this twofold secular attack on the rise here, but yeah.
Good point. Based Oracle, what's your thoughts, man?
On who's winning the culture war, right?
Yeah, and how you parse that out. So we kind of brought in the idea that the institutions are already captured. And so certainly when we're talking about the culture war, it's not that we have any institutional power or traditionally minded people have any institutional power. But looking at memetics, looking at millennial generation and Gen Z, it certainly seems, I agree with the Machine Lies, that a new right, a new whatever you want to call it, right wing or conservatism is emerging. And it seems to have a sort of cultural edge to it. But do you see as that winning? Do you see as that eventually losing? Do you see as that as another faux opposition? I think that was kind of I5's opinion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to probably overlap a little bit with Machine Lies, but probably a little bit different take in terms of, I would put it that at the base root level, degeneracy is winning. And this is evidenced by what I'll call the fact, I think it's pretty fucking factual, that most people are drugged up. Most people are living outside of reality in terms of there's this buffer that's created through I want to feel good. And as per Machine Lies' point, right, I do believe that technology has served as an accelerant to easier, quicker access to things that we know aren't good for us in the long term, but make it even easier to do the wrong things, which are indulging many times in the instant gratification measures, right? Without getting too specific, right? But in terms of social media, fast food, all sorts of toxins in the physical, mental, psychological arenas.
Yeah, that's a great point. No, technology is definitely a catalyst for whatever's going on in culture right now, both to the right and the left. Ortho Blaze, you're the next one to join. Do you have specific comments on the topic? And then Mr. Westford, and then again, we can move to a different general question if you guys are interested.
Just one thing, I wanted to say bye. I just wanted to stop by and check it out. I've never been
Later,
to these
bro.
things.
Yeah.
By the way, Nadim, I'm in London too right now. So
I'm not there right now, but I live there. So I'm
cool.
back home now, but
where are you from?
Lebanon.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah, I don't want to take over. Bye-bye.
All right, later, Walter.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Yep. God bless.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. For me, like in terms of who's winning the culture war, from my view, I more so view it not simply just a culture war, but it is an ongoing cultural revolution.
Yeah.
We've been experiencing it for at least a decade at this point, right? And the right is definitely on the back foot. We're not winning yet, but we have been slowing them down. We've been resisting a lot more in other places. There is a new right emerging. Is it like a false trap? Is it a false dialectic? It's hard to say. There's many different facets to it. I think that more people need to be woken up, really, for the right to truly begin to fight back, because most people are still asleep. They're still just unaware. They know things are bad, but they just don't know why they're bad, right? Because people are so demoralized, propagandized, lied to. They're just not, many are just not even paying attention. Most don't even care. Like, especially speaking to people that I work with, people in public that I meet, and a lot of my coworkers, they're unaware of what's really going on. And just so many people are too, and that's a bit of a black pill. And most people, like, as soon as they hear anything remotely relating to something even like this, they just don't want to hear it at all. And and obviously we're all all online, so on X, YouTube, whatever, so we see it all the time. We're in that space, but most people don't realize
feel like
that
the pendulum has some momentum moving towards the right side, because even some of the boomers I've talked to, again, the MAGA boomers who think Trump's going to come in and, like, deport 15 million people and shut down the border, which is fictitious thinking. But it seems like even they're at to use a mild term in their regards, more radical than they certainly were in 2016.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the pendulum? Because really culture and these cultural swings is like a pendulum.
Yes. I said this a while back. I think the pendulum's going to inevitably swing back, but the question is how hard and where is it going to swing back to? Because it can go in multiple directions. And if there is a civil war fomenting, it's honestly unpredictable. It really is hard to say at this point. I honestly don't even know.
Right.
I do want to disagree with that point, but I want to wait till everyone's done first, so I'll wait.
Okay. Well, I'll come right back to you. And Mr. Westford and Neurojack, do you guys have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I missed like the first half hour, so I don't know what all has been said. But I mean, if we're talking culture war, like what culture generation is the right actually doing? I know Ben Shapiro made like a movie, but I mean, is there? I mean, there's people who are on the right, like Chase Haggard. I guess you could say he's an ortho bro, so I guess you could say he's on the right if we wanted to classify that. But there's people who are making art, but I mean, what is the culture war that's happening? I think we might be talking about like political power or something like that. But it's hard for me not to look at it all as just political theater or, the pendulum swing going left and right. And I what I see as a danger in the future is the people on the right coming back hard because they're the people who are with all my guns and all that, and I'm scared. I'm tired of all these people in the cities, and let's go give them hell and all that. That's I think where we're going to see some dangers is people getting fed up.
All right, Neurojack, what are your thoughts, bro?
Thank you for having me. I have two questions first, just to set the stage.
Okay.
First, I would ask, what do you think of the term or the phrase "God's house is a traveling house"? What do you think of that phrase?
I'm not sure what that means in regards to God's house. You referring to the church?
Well, I think just to use an analogy, I've heard that phrase before, but I think in a way, like, how the first temple was basically like a tabernacle, right? So it wasn't like a building that was set. Am I correct about that?
Say that again. On my end, you cut out. I didn't hear that last part.
The first temple period was basically like a tabernacle, correct? Like
that's where the sacrifices took place. Yeah.
Right. So they traveled around and put God's house wherever it was, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I guess, what do you think about that going forward? Like, do you think that we're beyond that now, or do you think that that's still kind of the case?
I'm not sure what exactly you mean, that we're going to have a traveling tabernacle. What do you?
What I mean is,
what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to. Here's what I'm trying to get at, really.
Okay, just get to it.
Yeah. Here's what I'm trying to get at. If we're gonna have a good defense is kind of what I'm trying to say.
You're
and
roboting,
right now we're
dude.
In a situation where
your connection's breaking up.
Yeah, your connection's kind of bad, Neurojack.
I'll be right back. I'll just reset. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
And then
go ahead, I-Fi. You said you were going to mention something. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, okay. So a couple of quick disagreements. I don't think the pendulum is swinging back. Again, earlier I pointed out that it's more like an Overton window problem, where we're not talking about left versus right anymore. We're just talking about the center left versus the crazy left. And so that pendulum might swing back and forth for a little bit, but there's no right wing swing in my lifetime. Getting back to your issue that you feel like the ortho church is like the fastest growing, I would need to see those numbers. It's anecdotally, I would say it's more like the dying the slowest, because again, all Christian religions are dying at a very alarming rate, and so maybe
definitely not the case for the Orthodox Church.
Okay, if you have any numbers, I'll look it up. I just try to do a quick Google search, and every search I got said all of those numbers are going down, like, historically. So I don't know. Anyways,
I don't think there's any study, but Father Andrew Stephen Damick recently had a video where he anecdotally pulled a lot of people from dozens and dozens
just
of
like a
countries and
Pew
ask them the
Research,
numbers.
that interviews the general public just to get an
Well,
idea.
yeah, well, Pew, I think, does theirs every like 5 years in regards to religious demographics.
Right.
So,
Just some numbers we can look at, but
Right.
whatever is fine. I would
the
agree
one that
there-
was put out, you can, if you looked up, I believe it was the Orthodox Church of America, just highlighted that like 70 to 75% of all new converts were young men or men under the age of 45, and this is one of the things that have contributed to its pretty substantial growth within the United States, because Orthodoxy was like 0.04 of the population, and
Right.
if it continues the trends that it's on within the last like 3 to 4 years, it'll be 1 to 2% in the next 5 to 10 years.
So what I would say is happening there is sort of like a fad trend where, getting back to the culture question, I think you're getting a lot of like secular audiences that are suddenly becoming interested in religion, and Ortho is kind of like their first stop on their journey to see like who's the most tradcon or whatever. And so I think that's probably more of what you're seeing than actual.
Can I chime in? Just
Yeah, go
Hold
ahead.
on, hold on, Nadim, let him finish his thought.
And the reason why I say that is because, again, personal anecdotes. That's what I'm seeing in a lot of these conversations. Like, I'm not hearing a lot of people that were originally seeking out the Orthodox Church. They were seeking out like traditional Christian values that like fight back against the left-wing woke virus. And so for them, Orthodox fills that role, and maybe that's the boost in numbers you're seeing. That's all I was saying.
Well, I'm
Okay,
sure that
okay.
I would agree that that's certainly part of it. But people are still retaining their membership to various parishes. I mean, Orthodoxy takes a year to even be brought into the church. So those numbers are based on people being received in. That means that they had been at least going to the church for a year.
Also,
that's what I was gonna say.
You guys' PR campaign's doing awesome. Like I said, Andrew with the Crucible and stuff like that. You're really drumming up the masses, and so there's no doubt that you're getting new recruits. But I'm not sure how much of that's like long term, like church dedication versus culture war, knee-jerk reaction to the left wing.
To be able to join the Orthodox Church, you need at least a year of experience, as DPH said. So I don't think the numbers are that much of a stretch. Maybe some, maybe some are.
But let me add to IFI's point, because I agree with him that a lot of the young men that are coming are looking for traditional cultural church that is, again, responding against the woke mind virus, and it is the last bastion of any sort of traditional Christianity that could be salvaged. But I think that this is a multi-generational battle. So I agree with Andrew Wilson from the Crucible that, what we're, as Orthodox Christians, we're looking at, my goal is to get married. So my wife and we want to have multiple babies. And the goal is in a generation or two, how we're going to quote unquote win the culture war, because the population is going to collapse well before that.
And the reason why I don't want to derail this conversation, but actually tangent it into a very similar discussion about why the focus is on the Orthodox Church. And so, I think
at the end of the day, why the whole debate approach from Andrew Wilson is so appealing is that he rejects the notion of rights from classical liberalism. So this whole idea that in the 16th century, they just created the notion of equality and universal rights. That is one of the most salient points. And I wish there would be an actual, explanation of that, from the, philosophy of John Locke and Hobbes and all of that type of stuff, that really explains where they actually sort of finagled this concept from. I often say that the reason why we don't have rights, R-I-T-E-S, is because somebody took them and replaced them with rights, R-I-G-H-T-S. And that's what's usurping our traditions, is this notion of the universal man, which really comes from the notion of the archetypal man.
Machine Lies, are you Heideggerian by any chance? Have you read Martin Heidegger?
Yeah, I've read of him, but I don't subscribe to his philosophy really. But yeah, I have read him. I like his work about technology. He wrote an interesting work. The question concerning technology,
Yeah,
and
right.
that's one of the seminal works on the subject. So I appreciate his work on that, but I don't generally subscribe to Heidegger's philosophy. He has to take off that uniform, that Nazi uniform, right? In my opinion,
So
I'm in
I
Europe,
think
by the way.
I think the angle I was going with is way more simple. It's like almost too simple, maybe. So again, you had this whole big feminist movement that created all the feminazis, and then you got all these soy boys and all this, huge change in culture. And so what's happening is now you have young men that are looking to return back to the old, patriarch, alpha male type culture. And so I think that's what Orthodox Church fulfills that role for them. That's why it's suddenly very popular for them to hear more about this message. That's what I was getting at.
Okay.
I think the
In
problem
some
is that
cases,
it's
I
all
agree. In
bullshit,
others,
basically.
Which part? Which
Like
part?
all of it. When you really boil it down, it's all bullshit. Even this conversation, we're sitting here arguing a fucking false dichotomy.
I
Well,
had
yeah,
a
I mean, if we're
magic
talking,
8-ball
we're talking about
that
the left and the right. They're all it's political theater, like I
Yeah,
said. I mean,
Yeah, it's all bullshit. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
that's
So
what my Marxist professor signed my commemorative magic 8-ball. He signed it. It's all bullshit. And so
Man was a fucking genius.
seems kind of a defeatist sort of I just associate it with Dr. Hodges, but nonetheless,
Speaking
I'm
of
sorry.
Andrew, speaking of culture war, I think you just hit the nail on the head. What's fueling the entire left-wing woke mind virus is Marxism, and that is the culture war. It's the difference between Marxism and its opposite, whatever you want to title that.
If I may, and you can only be so humble when you're the only person. Well, no, I take that back. My business partner is also the only people doing intelligence-based research into the left, because I used to be a leftist sociology professor until just a few short years ago. And then I had a heart attack and a near-death experience, which ultimately brought me back to the church after 20 years of apostasy, and was approached by a student colleague of mine from 25 years ago who was studying in Medellin, Colombia, and his department was trying to prevent him from publishing research that he found. He was on one of the Facebook teams that was supposed to investigate the scrubbed data for election interference after the last election with the Russia, but instead found a whole bunch of Venezuelan interference. And so was having all sorts of problems in the department because they were a bunch of leftists, took his data, and we started a company to try to get this noise out there. But what's been ignored, and he actually attended the first one in two.
You cut out.
You cut out, dude. Your
He
connection broke.
cut out.
I lost the plot. Does anybody else lose the
I
plot?
wanted to bring up a point about the pendulum swinging.
he lost the
So
point.
one thing that we've seen throughout history, I think there's many examples here
The U.S.
of
Social Forum.
the. Oh, he's still talking. Okay.
Yeah,
You cut
the
out, Andrew.
World
You were
Social-
out for like 10 seconds.
You cut out, Andrew. We didn't hear the last paragraph or so.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Oh, he just cut out again.
It
Am
was
I
something
back?
about the church.
You're back. Yeah, we heard you.
Yeah, you're
So,
talking
yeah,
about Venezuelan influence in the
decades of week-long communist conventions involving tens of thousands of participants, workshopping stuff from successful revolutionaries throughout South America that came to the U.S., accomplished the largest transfer of organizational technology to U.S. leftist groups, and nobody's reported a darn thing on any of this. There's like a couple local news reports, and this is where the Castro Chavist model, which the entire continent of South America talks about Castro Chavism, and everybody here is still trying to figure out, is woke Maoism like a freaking James Lindsay? No, it's not. Maoism was last century, but Castro and Chavez operationalized this model, and what we are seeing is the result of this transfer of organizational technology, the networks that were established and developed. that almost all of these leftists in the US are connected to. There was just a book put out by Numani called Woke Army that covers the relationship between the jihadis and the Hamas protesters and the CCP, and everybody's freaking out like, oh, can you believe?
By the way, dude, it's not me. I don't have the audio feedback.
Yeah, who's got the chimes in the back and like the
Someone's got bad feedback.
Yeah, the
not me.
Okay.
It's not me.
Okay, Neuralink,
like a
you had
wind
something
tunnel.
you wanted to add. Your connection was cutting out earlier. What was it, brother? Neurojack, are you still there? All right, I guess he's not even there anymore.
Chimes are removed.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Told you it wasn't me.
I
Anyway,
was trying- if I could
Down,
cut
bro.
back in here, finish
Yeah, go ahead,
what I
Mace.
was saying about the pendulum. So what we know from history is that there is a tendency for problems to exist and then new problems to arise in the guise of solutions that end up being an overcompensation. The way I would look at that is like, just to make it very simple, feminism and then fresh and fit. They're really the same thing, just very different takes, so-calledly, but same type of goals.
It's feminism versus manimism. Fresh and fit versus feminism.
I like notice like we're in a matrix, right? And I don't even mean like a physical simulation theory type matrix. Let's look at it like a matrix of ideas, right? And mind states and psyops. And you got everybody pointing to different parts of this synthetic system trying to figure this shit out. And I'm telling you that it's all bullshit. That's the reality.
Is there
you
any
can sit
part
here
that
and try to analyze this part of the bullshit. You can analyze that part of the bullshit. You can use this talking point. You know what I mean? You could use this podcast snippet. What does that matter? You could quote a fucking author. It's all part of the
So what's
bullshit.
your argument?
All right.
My
so
argument
thanks-
is you need
thanks
to
for
get
that
back
really-
to what's real. That's all that matters.
And what's real?
What is
That's
real
rest.
is what is going to be.
What is that? Well, if
That's
it's-
what we're
how can
talking
it be
about.
real
Well,
if it's
it's-
going to be? That would mean
What
it
is
hasn't-
going
it
to
hasn't
be
come
is
to
what is
fruition
real.
yet.
It's like, why do we do all the things that we do?
What's real right now, and what's
What do
real
animals
past?
do, right? They grow up, they become strong, they eat, and then they procreate, right?
Okay.
Okay, what
They
do we
raise
do?
their young and then they go. Not all of them do, but that's the majority. That's the majority
But we're not animals.
schematic for all fucking of nature.
So I did
Are
want
we
to
animals,
follow
man?
up, ask Andrew, does he feel like there is no correlation between Marxism and this communist movement you were referring
Oh no,
to?
it's 100%. The
Okay.
successful communist governments of South America.
So then
Cuba
you agree
and
with me
Venezuela,
That's the
put this
core
program
of
into
the
effect.
woke mind virus is Marxism, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
now that we're on the same page, now you can understand why I'm referring to that's what I call the left wing versus right wing, because again, the centrist left wing, like the Republicans, aren't resisting Marxism. They're, if anything, they're starting to embrace it now. They're just doing it more slowly than the Democrats. The
I
Democrats,
personally think the Democratic Party's been completely infiltrated and subverted
yes,
by these Castro Chavez interests. And right
We
now
agree.
we don't have like a two-party thing. Right
I think
now,
the YouTube
Chavez
panel has been
effectively transformed
subverted.
the United
we
States
agree, we
into
agree.
another
And so,
South American.
so
the
if
same
you
with-
want a right wing party, y'all keep saying we have to like recreate a new right wing or something like that. If anything, we could just go back to the original right wing before the left wing completely destroyed it and blew it out of existence. So the
When was
right wing is
that?
very simple. It's just small government, capitalism, Christian-based morality, or some form of morality, whether you worship, other gods or whatever, something that resembles rule of law. That's a start.
So you want to keep the base American conservatism? Keep
That
it
word has
American.
completely lost meaning. I don't even know what conservative means in America.
Should we have
No,
a
I'm
constitutional
talking
republic?
about your
Or
your way.
My way would be
Conservative.
so far back, it would, we would have to go back to like the Pilgrims getting away from authoritarian governments and separating church and state, and then creating a libertarian
Well, don't you think
country.
secularism is part of the problem because it relativizes?
No. The Pilgrims were very religious. We were very Christian when we built this country.
I understand that, but secularism as an Enlightenment
But
ideology
they-
relativizes all thought and all religion, generally speaking.
That's
so
the
therefore,
problem.
the state is the ultimate God because it is the ultimate authority.
That's the
The problem is that it masqueraded as Christianity, and it
so
was
the,
not.
the problem is it's definitely one of those catch-22s. It's like it's a paradox where, like, if you have too much freedom, you have people turning away from God. If you have no freedom, you have a theocracy in which everyone's forced by the government to worship your God. And so
What
we
do you mean by
tried
freedom?
God doesn't want you to follow him because you have to. He wants you to do it because you want to.
We tried
so the
theocracy.
rules don't
it
matter.
failed. Europe.
Which
doomed
theocracy you're talking
itself.
about? You're talking about Calvin and his theocracy. Which you said
All
you have to go all the way
theocracies.
back to the Pilgrims.
All
That's not very far back. That's
You can't
All
can't
of
put
them,
all
Westford.
theocracy in one parenthesis.
I'm talking about
There's
all of them,
different
Westford.
theocracies.
I don't
What
care.
about
if you
what
pick,
about mono?
I don't
what
care
about
if you
monarchy?
pick Catholic Europe or the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East, or whatever. It doesn't matter which one you pick. The theocracies always fail.
If you
period.
believe in the Bible, then you believe that no man can rule, and only Christ
so in
is going to
America,
be king.
we separated church and state, and we had a Christian nation that freely worshiped.
That's part of the problem, though. The
Christianity.
separation of church and the state is why we're here. That was a tragedy.
No, that wasn't the problem. The problem was
Yes,
it slowly got corrupted by the authoritarian socialists and Marxism.
But I-Fi, can you
To the
point to
point-
one secular nation?
But that's what the
still-
church.
Hold on.
That's
I
what
find
I-Fi,
it's a spiral of
I-Fi,
bullshit.
Can you point to one secular nation or one formerly Protestant nation that's still majority Christian? I mean, that the secularism is the problem.
I can't because the problem is it's not that a
Isn't it
free
ironic
religious
that this is
nation
what our
is
flag
the
looks like?
perfect answer. It's the best answer. It's better than a theocracy, but it's not perfect. So it still has
What's
its own
wrong?
problems.
What's
Can you
wrong with
define
the Christian
theocracy?
Again, Catholic Europe is what we were trying to get away from in the United States, and even the
Who's
Church of
talking about
England,
Catholic
which is a
Europe?
Protestant.
There's
theocracy.
other
Bro, this
models
is
than
like
just
the
Catholic Europe.
Walmart Jordan Peterson,
But
bro.
they-
Calm down.
But do you think the UK is still a Christian country?
No,
It's
not
not.
even remotely, dude.
Okay,
UK
do you
was
think,
gone a long time ago.
Okay, so you're arguing for
I'm arguing
for
that the
faith.
United States of America, when it was formed, was mostly by Christians for Christians of
Agreed.
Christians.
Okay, now
we agree with
how is
that.
it? Now how
And the
is it?
They
problem
weren't
is,
actually Christians. Look at
we
the
were
country they
Right.
built.
all right,
Or
Rand, we get
Protestant.
the point, dude.
Oh,
All you're doing
why
is
are the
just shitting on
roads
the
built in the
thread.
satanic geometry? I
All
guess
right,
we were
dude,
Christians.
we get it. Nothing's real.
Fucking
Nothing's real.
idiot.
We get it, bro. We get it. Okay, so
Come on,
anyways, we were getting away
No,
from
he's right.
a
He's
theocracy.
right. No, listen. He's right.
They just raised obelisks and fucking all kinds of demonic
Britain
shit.
was a
because-
Protestant theocracy. So obviously they were the bad guys we were fighting against. America was promoting a libertarian Christian government where it's not
And it
forced by
failed.
the government, but
They can both be bad.
promoted.
Yeah, we got Jesus on the back of the dollar, y'all.
And so that's the best system. There is no perfect system. There is no perfect answer that will solve
But
all
it
human
failed.
problems. There's
It
only
failed.
better than others.
It's because
Look how
of the
Christian we are. We did nothing but fucking bloodshed, mass
So-
murder, and fucking pillage.
A
Alright, so-
libertarian government that allows the freedom of religion is better than a theocracy, is what I'm saying. That's
But it
that's what
failed.
I'm
You're
arguing.
libertarian. So if you're saying that the US started as a libertarian Christian country
Yes.
and it's the best system that's gonna
Yes.
work forever, it didn't. It didn't.
I didn't say
It
it was
failed.
going to work forever. I said it's the best
Okay,
system.
it worked for what?
It worked for at least 100
That's
years,
nothing.
if not a little
Okay,
over
how
100
much?
years.
How much time did the Byzantine Empire work? How much
Yeah,
time
the-
was it?
All empires failed, dude. There's no
Okay,
there's no
how much
empire
time-
that lasts
The America's
forever.
failing much
You're-
faster than the
you're-
Byzantines did.
Yeah, the
comparing
Byzantine was over
100 years to
1100 years.
300 years.
Hey, Nadim, is the Holy Roman Empire still around? Is the
How long? How your is the is your empire is your libertarian view still around? No, it
do
was
you
only
have an
100 years.
Eastern Orthodox country that you'd like to present that was a successful
Russia?
theocracy?
Russia?
Well,
Sure,
how do you
still
find a
Byzantium.
theocracy? Because it's not the same.
Russia?
How you define it as.
Orthodox?
Byzantium?
Probably Wallachia under Vlad the
Byzantium?
Impaler.
Byzantium was Byzantium
Is
was
Byzantium
working.
still around? Are the Byzantines still around?
It stayed.
But
Yeah,
I-Fi, you're not
they're
making a coherent argument. Nobody's arguing that the empires don't rise and fall. The point was what's actually most sustainable, and secularism, given its cultural record, can't survive over 300 years. And we have multiple historical examples of monarchies and what you would describe as theocracies that have lasted over 1,000 years.
I'm not arguing for secularism.
You're
I'm arguing
That
that
is what separation of church and state is. That is
I'm
secularism.
arguing that a theocracy, no matter which church is in charge of the country, will fail. Period.
But that's true for anything this side of eternity. I mean, that's
And actually, that's worse. It's worse to be in that system
Well,
because
how
that's
do
where you get like that's where you get your head chopped off for not worshiping the right God or whatever, or kissing the right
that was
tree.
actually the case.
Why is it worse?
We're not talking about Calvin.
Can I show you where that's actually the case? Are you familiar with the Dark Ages in Europe, where the Pope
The Dark Ages
ran all the countries?
Yeah, but the Dark Ages were thriving in Byzantium at that time. That's my point. If you look at history.
So you think we should go back to the Dark Ages of Europe because that's better than America?
No, not Europe.
You sound like someone who doesn't know about
perspective.
You're equivalent to somebody looking at America and be like, you are all like Californians are all blue-haired feminists because they see some of it, and you're just coloring all of it by that one caricature.
I'm pointing out more the cultural problem.
So you're saying it's not important to be
Japanese
sustainable as a state. It's just important.
And they do go hand in hand. That's the problem. You can't address one without the other. You can't address culture without government or religion.
Your line of logic.
You have to tie them all together.
Explain to me the line of logic you took. Okay, so you said the libertarian state worked in the U.S. for a couple of 100 years. Okay,
and then you gave the example of Russia. You said Russia is better than America because it was a better Orthodox Christian nation than America.
Let me finish my point. Okay, so that's 100 years. Okay, and you said we have to go back there, but it failed in 100 years. And I'm
how many years did Christian Russia last?
Listen, the theocracy of Byzantium was up for 1,100 years. So that's 1,000 years more. Which one? How is your argument better than mine?
My argument is history. So currently,
that's his argument too. That's what
we're dealing with Russia that became the Soviet Union, which promoted communism because of all the great Orthodox Christianity
pushed by the West.
How long was
from the West?
Hold on, guys.
How long was the Soviet Union? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
One at a time. We're talking a little bit over each other. So somebody else can chime in response to I-Fi, and then he can respond to myself and whoever's next. But the point is not that Bolshevik revolution, which we know who is behind that, has anything to do with Orthodox Christianity. The point that he was making is just historical examples of empires, and your initial discussion on secularism and let's just say from 1776 to 1876, since you said the first 100 years,
at least,
yeah. So our point is that Enlightenment values the divorcing of God and state and the elevation of reason actually has been a failed experiment throughout the world. And you can point to any current secular or former Protestant nation. And it's not that one is arguing that Russia is the greatest country to ever exist, but you could still point that they still have their Christian faith. So since Vladimir the Great, let's say the 900s up to 2024, Russia is still Orthodox Christian. Despite 80 years of the Soviet Union.
I think that's a pretty hot debate right there. Does Russia still have its Christian identity? I don't know. That's a tough one.
How does it not?
It's the biggest Orthodox country.
Were you around during World War II when the Soviets?
That was the Bolshevik Revolution, bro. That was a total different period. That fell in December of 1991.
Would you still identify as a Christian nation there, or what are you saying?
We just said no. It's communist. Do you know who the Bolsheviks were?
Yeah.
Of course. So that has nothing. That was antagonistic to Orthodoxy and Christianity. They killed millions and millions of Orthodox Christians.
So before World War II, how long did Russia remain a good example of a Christian nation?
800 years?
Over 800 years.
Okay,
You're talking about
that's
history.
that's
At
a
least
good
know your
start.
history. What do you mean
I
that's a
still
good
think
start? It's
the
better than 100 years.
I still think
It's
first of
better
all,
than
the
100
question
years.
is
Your
why did
start
it
is
fail
bad.
if it's the best system? Why did it fail?
It's not eternity. There's no system on earth that could sustain eternity.
I already said that. I
That's not our
agree. There
argument.
is no
That's not our
perfect system.
argument. We're just saying it's better than your worldview that only sustains
Okay,
100
so
years
was it a
compared to 1,000 and
theocracy?
300.
Was Russia a theocracy? Were you punished by death if
Yes.
you weren't Christian?
No,
No.
you're not
Probably
punished by
not.
Still a
death if you weren't
theocracy.
Christian.
They did the same
No.
shit in
Still a
Siberia as they did
theocracy.
on the American, North
Neither did
American
So-
slave.
Byzantium or the Holy Roman Empire
read
punish
the
people
history
to
of
death.
the Rus, man.
Actually, there were a lot of nations that would.
I'd still want to know
burn you
how
at the
more
stake for not
freedom is
kissing
bad.
the ring. So you know
And
you can't excuse them all.
A lot of states doesn't build on the argument. It doesn't make it's a fallacy. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make our view wrong.
Anyways, based
if
Oracle
other
or the
Christian
machine
states
lies, or what are your somebody chime in because you
Yeah,
guys have been kind of silent.
I was asking how more freedom is bad, going back a bit on what I-Fi was saying, that too much freedom equals bad things.
Well, I think that there is a distinction between freedom and licentiousness, but that goes back to a sort of medieval concept, that's very useful, in fact, so you can't dismiss all of the philosophy from the Middle Ages and call it Dark Ages, because that's indeed going back within a liberal paradigm, but the thing about it is that in the medieval times, there was a serious regression of the relation between God, king, and people in this idea of the church and state, operating within separate and equal spheres. That's laid out by Thomas Aquinas. So I think that there is some issues with the idea of church and state being parallel institutions, because then the religious ideas can only affect society in a sort of secondary way, because the state controls the power,
So I can answer your question. So as I said, it's a paradox. The paradox is the more freedom you have, the higher your chance of failure. Because if it's up to the individual to make sure to be a good Christian citizen, he may just say, I don't believe in this religious stuff, I'm out. As
He could
opposed
just
to like
be a good person.
an authoritarian government,
that
which
trumps-
basically
that trumps
pressures you
that
to
trumps
follow.
Hold on,
those-
Nadim. We got to let each other finish because it gets
Sorry.
too convoluted when we speak over
As
each other.
opposed to a authoritarian government which pressures all of its citizens to stay in line and follow the status quo, you're going to have higher rates of retention just out of submission. Like you'll have citizens that don't really believe in Christianity, but at least obey the laws and don't fight back against it.
That would also imply for our criticisms of cultural Marxism here in the United States, because the federal government is pushing all these things.
Yeah.
So
So that's the age-old debate. Based, it's like which side do you fall on, the authoritarian Christian nationalist side or the libertarian Christian side? Because those are very different approaches.
Well, here's the thing: authoritarianism, which is kind of the opposite of freedom in some term, right, has not seemed to do very well for the world in general. You want to put the power of the people in the government, and here I understand that you're fighting for less government. But how do you make that work? How do you?
Because you still promote Christianity. I'm not saying you dismiss it or ignore it. You just don't enforce it by law. You don't use the government to say, if you're not a Christian, we will shame you and deport you or whatever, anything like that.
Well, sure, you can encourage it without forcing it, and I think that would be the proper way. If you believe in it, and therefore you're making it seem incentivized in some way. Look, you'll go to heaven. You'll have a better life, this sort of thing. But again, I don't know how that really goes to the argument that more freedom is bad. More individual freedom.
I'm saying it tongue in cheek. You have to understand the way I'm saying it. I'm saying with freedom comes more responsibility. Some humans are not good at personal responsibility. They are sheep that have to be led because they cannot think for themselves. So for those groups of people, a government is good because that village tells them how to live a moral, justified life.
But it's resulting in what you're complaining about in society, right? All the sheep,
There's
all
the catch. There's the
right.
catch, Chase. There's
So
always
that's why
the
I'm not
catch.
sure why you're really
Right. That's why we're confused by your argument, because it seems self-contradicting.
It sounds like it because when you're young, you think that the answer is more government because thinking is hard. So I'm just going to let daddy government tell me how to live my life because
Well,
I'm
I
dumb
can't
and I can't think
understand.
for myself.
well,
But when you get
survival of the
older,
fittest.
you
know?
start becoming more individual and you say, fuck the
What
government.
about
I
Mike
can
Mixwright?
control myself.
What about
I
Nietzsche?
can't understand. You're contradicting yourself.
That's the
Uh,
contradiction is humanity is dynamic. Sheep don't always remain sheep. Some of them grow their own brains and start thinking for themselves. That's your problem.
That's against the
That-
argument that
Does
you
the
said
Nietzschean argument
libertarianism.
for
Christian
beyond good and evil, like
libertarianism is the best.
that makes more sense, right?
What are you saying, Treborn?
What
Torborn, sorry.
Yeah, like the idea that power is the only logic of life.
Yeah, that's the postmodern
that,
term. So Michel Foucault, that's what he argues in Power and
Well,
Knowledge.
but he does that derived from Nietzsche and Heidegger, paradoxically enough.
Agreed.
Which
Agreed.
is why I wanted to talk about Nazgul earlier. It's probably going to fail the same way as everything else, but this idea that, like, how come we call daddy government? Isn't it just another way of referring to daddy God? But this time we constructed him. But isn't the Bible itself an attempt to construct in the eternal, and as such undermines itself? And that any anti-modernist argument based on Christianity is in fact fallacious, because there would be no modernity without Christianity.
I mean, what sort of Christianity are you talking
Like,
about?
we wouldn't have modern society if it wasn't for the Bible. Like,
That's
to
true.
revert to tradition in Christianity is not to exit the prism of modernity.
Well,
It's to
no.
entrench yourself
No,
further.
hold on. Let me respond to that, because that's a logical fallacy, because that totally neglects intellectual history in regards to various periods. So Christianity itself, one, you have to differentiate which one, because the theologies don't necessarily align one-to-one. Papal structures versus synodal structure of the East versus Reformation, revolutionary theology of 1517. And then that leads into the Enlightenment. That leads into Renaissance thinking, the elevation of man. The Enlightenment has to do with the elevation of reason itself. So when you're talking about the modern situation we're in, modernity doesn't really start until the end of the 1600s. So to me, that doesn't, that's not a, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's born out of this stuff that Machine was talking about. With Aquinas and everything.
But why didn't any of that stuff happen in the
Descartes.
East then? The East never had a Renaissance. The East never had a Reformation. The East never had an Enlightenment in which elevated man's reason above God. So
Well,
these
I
are
think,
uniquely Western.
It
These are
doesn't come from
uniquely
the
Western
Bible.
concepts.
It doesn't
Well,
come
I
from
was
the
talking
Bible. It
about
comes from misinterpretation of tradition. It doesn't come from the Bible.
I was talking about this with
the root of modernity is not the Bible. It's the root of modernity.
I don't think he was saying.
Well, it's really
I think you were saying was just that the modernity is like post-Christian, and that it still has some aspects or residue from the Christianity it came from. Is that what you're trying to say?
From specifically the
It's
Protestantism.
Christianity too. It's Christianity too. It's the Bible 3. It's the New Testament.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that
one long
is that I was talking about with Jim Apologetics earlier, that the influence of the Kabbalah on the Protestants, and the writing of Johannes Reuchlin, who wrote this work called De Arte Kabbalistica. So you see that before they actually had the scientific enlightenment, they had this kind of Protestant Reformation, and that was heavily influenced by the Rosicrucians and the Moravian Brethren and all of these kind of groups. So it wasn't nominally Christian. It was more kind of a Christianity that was influenced by the Kabbalah, which is not like really like real Christianity, but it's more like occultism, a new age kind of mystery cult,
Right. So if you look at Rosicrucianism, all this stuff begins after the translation of the Corpus Hermeticum in 1463 by Marsilio Ficino, which then set off what's many scholars believe the most magical century in European history, which was the 1600s. I mean, the 1500s, the 16th century. So that's where you get Weishaupt and the Illuminati. That's where you get the Rosicrucians. That's where you start to get new structures within Freemasonry that are dealing with these grand spiritual ideas of the architect. And that gives rise to the Enlightenment. And, you know, the Royal Society wouldn't exist without the Invisible College of Rosicrucians.
It's only elite culture, though. Like mystery orders is elite culture. Folk faith was magical all the way up until 1975. Like the last actual magical people sat around whining about how the wrong side lost the war in 1975 while pretending to be normal. Like you watch old TV footage from European countries and they still exist in Russia. Like this,
I don't know if
I just want to say that snoring in the background is wild. Like whoever snores. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can you say again what you just said? Because I
like blood tuning and fucking, you know, like
what were you saying?
You can go down to the fucking square today and meet the gypsy, and they're doing magic. You know, like it's not really a big deal. The only reason why we're sitting having this conversation is because we value the written word more than the spoken one, and that's inherently modern. No matter how many years back you go.
I don't know if that's inherently modern, given, you know, writing was debated amongst Socrates and Plato. So
yes, exactly.
That's not the modern period, and that's not
Christian
modern
narrative, right?
I would, if you listen to Marshall McLuhan, but Marshall McLuhan, if you're interested in theories of technology, would argue that we're moving back to an oral society, we're moving back to a tribal structure, and we're moving back.
I'm already living in it.
Well, that's not necessarily a positive thing, though. As he highlights, this is going to lead to degradations in intelligence. We're already seeing the drop in overall intelligence because these are tied with the ability to think logically is tied with the ability to be able to
personally, I think it's quite opposite in fact. But you know,
the problem too with the drop in IQ and intelligence, if average IQ drops 3 points, the number of people who are genius level, like 2 standard deviations and above, gets cut in half. So just that slight move toward the middle on a standard distro curve, you lose like half the people that are the thinking, the driving forces behind society innovation, the Elon Musks and stuff like that, the Isaac Newtons, they get. So that's what DPH mentioned is like.
Yeah, but who cares? What does that matter at all? What does it matter if it drops 2 points, 50%? We don't have a problem with people not being smart enough. We have a problem with people being drugged up, people doing the wrong things, being degenerates, which I don't know of any correlation to IQ and moral compass.
I'm going to be the taco
I think
girl
there's actually
why not both?
There's a strong correlation with IQ and like high trust societies. So which would be tied with the upholding of moral behavior.
I would think it'd be inverse, but I haven't seen that.
Well, I mean, are you familiar with the book The Bell Curve?
No. I mean, I've heard of.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into it because we're on YouTube, but my point is if you look into that and you look into the groups that score typically lower in IQ distribution, they also have higher crime based in their populations around the world.
Yeah, I don't know if crime in and of itself, I mean, depending on the crime, right? There's a qualitative measure aside from the quantitative. So I don't know if that's the smoking gun, but I hear you.
Also more likely to appeal to a collective versus the individual responsibility.
Again, I would make an argument that the responsibility and the upholding of the individual really comes with the belief in the incarnation of God as a single person, the God-man, which I believe is a novel and beneficial development within intellectual history, which is related to Christianity.
Referring to the New Testament, right?
Also, I hate to be that guy, but every time y'all bring up bell curves, don't forget your Overton window, because again, that's the problem. We are so far to the left, we're not even talking about the right anymore. It doesn't matter if you distribute the bell curve. There's no right involved.
I don't get the correlation there.
Like,
because we're talking about a cultural war in which there's no opposing side.
Like, who cares?
Well, the right will be where the left is today in a decade probably.
The only culture war is between the center and the left. There is no right-wing conflict at all.
Yeah, well, and that's the left's
Fighting.
weaponization of vocabulary. And anything that isn't explicitly Marxist, if you have any inclination to support capitalism, you're labeled as far right, because
Or
anything
alt-right
outside
or
the Marxist paradigm
terrorists.
is far right.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point.
Yeah, it sounds like
They've done that with pretty
soapboxing.
much the entirety of the vernacular
Backing your
discourse around politics.
I thought that was what it meant to be right wing. Just back up your word.
Also, I got some more
What are
bad
they
news for
for?
y'all if you want it. As far as the cultural wars going, I don't know if you guys keep up with AI or not, but if you ever test any of the AI we have available to us, it's all left-wing propaganda. There is no right-wing AI out there. There is no objective, balanced AI. It's all
Well, you could. I mean, I
left-wing
wouldn't say that.
narrative.
I mean, you could point to Gab and Andrew Torba's AI. That one's pretty free of leftist bias. But I mean, your point's taken. I mean, my academic training is in new religious movements, of which I write about transhumanism. So I follow AI and technology pretty heavily. But yeah, that's part of the problem, that within the technology that's being utilized is that it's being infiltrated with all these values. And that's what I meant by, it seems at the individual level, people are waking up to some degree, but at an institutional level, everything is stacked against that population. And that it certainly has to reach a breaking point at some time.
And
I
as
just
someone-
want to point out, iFi, you really just said, hey guys, do you know that mainstream iFi has mainstream narratives? I mean, that's really what you're saying.
What?
You're relating that AI, mainstream AI, let's call it
Yeah.
ChatGPT or whatever.
Yep.
Like, hey guys, it has mainstream narratives, and
That's
I
not
think
what I
that's
said at
pretty
all.
obvious. Well,
I
no, I
said
know
it-
that's not
it
what you
has
said. You
a
said it has
very
leftist.
Strong left-wing bias, meaning if you ask it an objective question like how many right-wing citizens are currently alive in the United States today, it will give you the answer of the center left wing. That's not the answer to your question. It's just telling you that this many people voted for Trump. So
I would
if
argue.
you ask it an actual right-wing question, it will first censor your questions and say, I'm not allowed to discuss this topic. And then if you trick it into answering the question, it will then kind of hint at why it's not allowed to answer that topic.
I understand what you're saying. You're missing what I'm
artificial
saying.
Yeah, I think you guys are speaking past each other. You want to explain what you're saying, Base Oracle?
I'm just saying that this is the same idea of, well, if I go on Google and search for something, I'm getting leftist takes are popping up number one, and alt news sources are more scarce and this type of thing. So I was simply pointing out that it's intuitive at this point, this stage, this culture, that the mainstream AIs would have a mainstream take. You're calling it leftist? Fine.
No, I was specifically calling out non-mainstream. So like I would call out the example of open AI. That they're supposed to be not influenced by any political party or corporation or whatever. You know, this sounds familiar, right, guys? Oh,
Yeah,
we're
many
totally
things
going to be
Yeah,
objective.
but that doesn't mean much because we already
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's owned by Microsoft. So anybody who would believe that it's not going to be programmed with leftist biases, I think, is a moron.
Open AI is owned by Microsoft.
What's the point you're
I didn't
making,
know that.
Wi-Fi? Just
Holy crap! I thought
what's
they
the
were
point you're making?
avoiding corporate ownership, but that there shows my knowledge. Anyways,
Okay, Wi-Fi,
Yeah, there's a big delta between what they say and what they do.
right. And on your point, DPH, as someone who actually has a Gab account, I just want to laugh out loud that you think anyone uses Gab for
I'm not saying
anything
they do.
on the internet.
I was just making a point that not all AI, and it's not hard to create an AI system that wouldn't be filled with leftist bias. That's why, as a technological tool, I think it will be used by people on the other side.
But it's sort of like comparing like Google search versus Netscape Navigator search.
No, it's not, because this stuff. No, because
use
this. Because this technology has already been democratized in the sense that anybody could build it with technological know-how. Like somebody, I guarantee, for
it's
example,
an open source. It's an open.
Yeah,
It's an
so
open source.
the
If
Crucible
it's so
Crew.
open source, why does it already tell you what political view to have? That's what I'm getting.
That's not
You
what.
can take
That's
that out of it, bro. Do you not
If I
understand
may,
how it works?
I guess
if
I'm gonna
I
have
may,
to, since there
the,
are no objective
right-
AIs out there. You know,
part of the right's problem is what goes on in like these chats, and every chat is like, let's debate and figure out the minutia about what exactly is wrong, and is it wrong in this way or that way, but what are we gonna do about it? We all agree that one way or another, pardon my Ukrainian, I don't speak French, but we're fucked. And they've got the institutions. The way the pendulum is swinging is questionable, but unless so, like, why not some sort of collect movement? And from what I've seen, like, the right is so individualistic, so but
there you go.
everybody wants to be so right in and of themselves that to just like not argue the point and put it aside to maybe like make some signs or write a few nasty emails or whatnot. It just doesn't happen. And we have to pry these institutions out of their
Hey,
hands.
Andrew, I'll tell you the natural problem to your question. It's kind of like herding cats. I don't know if you've ever kept animals before, but like herding sheep and cattle, okay. If you ever tried herding cats, that's what it's like trying to get all these right-wing people together.
This is exactly what Rene Descartes was thinking about when he created modernity. As you would know if you read Martin Heidegger Without Prejudice and realized why Foucault accepted him to begin with.
So what are they doing? They're isolating themselves out there in their little military complexes, and they're just waiting for civilization to fail, and then they're just going to clean up the scraps. That's what they're doing. Bunkers in the woods.
Yeah,
well, hey, I've got mine. Shit.
Meanwhile, the left wing is more than happy to congregate into all these big metropolis cities and keep voting Democrats in and pushing authoritarian socialism at light speed, and that's why your country looks like it does now.
So how about identifying these networks, pointing out that these are agents of foreign states operating without being declared as such, and dismantle the darn networks? But
not just foreign states.
Looking into that.
Look at our own internal mechanics. Do you remember when the leftards blew up California and completely ruined the entire state? What did they do? They just all packed up and moved over to Texas. Well, guess what? Red state's slowly turning into a blue state now. Have you seen Austin lately? Have you seen Houston?
It's been that way forever.
No, it hasn't been forever.
No, studies have shown that most people leaving these states are mostly conservative, not blue. Austin has been blue forever. It's been terrible forever.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying like starting there. Look at the blast radius that is now turning blue overnight. Like,
but Joe Rogan is still the biggest.
We're arguing about the solution
because everyone in California just moved to Texas, and now they're going to parasite off of that state until they turn it blue and kill it.
I mean, if they turned it blue, why would they leave? It's the Reds that are leaving. That doesn't make sense.
If every state was so easily destroyed like that from the blue wave, wouldn't they just do that with every state? I mean, if that's how weak the red states are.
That's why the people that left New York are destroying Florida and so on. It's just nonstop. They blow up everything that they own, and then they move on.
When they leave, what happens?
The other matter related to that is migration, because they're talking about like, all of these migrants, whether or not they get the right to vote sooner or later, they're going to be counted in terms of census and congressional apportionment. But the thing that nobody is considering is, given they've been brought here by the CCP, Venezuela, etc., and the Castro Chavez networks, they're a fifth column right now. Anything happens, they've already showed up en masse to protest and stir shite up and turn things blue, or at least push the blue agenda in places where even cities are pushing back against it. In New York, you've got like the black communities come out against it, but they've had protests of migrants there too. And if there's any major laws proposed or deportations like Trump is planning to do, there's going to be millions of these people that got nothing to do that can show up in DC and agitate for their home governments because they were sent here in the first place by them.
By the way, Andrew, I just want to take a second to note that this is why I love former left-wing people, because they know so much more than all these like dead-eyed right-wing people who think they're making a difference. But
And
Andrew,
it's crazy.
you just covered so many important things that never even gets brought up in these discussions.
And my partner attended the very first social forum in the US in Atlanta. One of the leaders of BLM was on the organizing committee. These places, this is where the BLM riots were frickin' planned, plotted, the groundwork was laid. Same thing with the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. The National Lawyers Guild that represented all of the tribes, their president went to Venezuela to observe elections for the frickin' regime. Every single tribe that was active at those protests, every single one of them, without exception.
Right on. So it's people like you and people like Candace Owens that gives me hope, because again, no one knows the left wing.
Nobody's talking about this. I'm sorry that I get all heated, but and they've been missing it for 20 years, and the stuff's on our webpage. We translated a book. Chapter 8 of Next Gen Marxism talks about this. 95% of it is my partner Ariel Sheen's research. He was in touch with Mike Gonzalez from the Heritage Foundation. Like, yeah, we'll work on this. We'll write an article together. Totally ghosted him, stole his fucking data, and wrote his book using that as a chapter, cites him and thanks him in it. But the New Yorker is, if you guys could keep this on the DL, the New Yorker is doing an article in June about the right wing plagiarizing our shit without giving us proper due. And we've been trying to get this across for a couple of years now, but they won't dare admit that they've missed the elephant in the room for 20 fucking years. And like, I didn't want to do this. I got my compound in the woods. I disappeared, but God gave me this heart attack to bring me back to the church and to fight Satan, because when this Jew from 25 years ago showed up to me to ask me to do this.
Easy, Andrew.
All right. It was about
YouTube,
socialist affiliated transnational advocacy networks, Satan. So my Jewish partner brings me a thing like, hey, help fight what is essentially Satan at a time when I was really trying to figure out what God wanted me to do with my pathetic life. And so I've taken this on my shoulders, and this is going to sound like absolute madness, but we had the press release get denied because it named specific entities, all this other stuff. And I talked to him and I'm like, yeah, well, we're doing this. This is for, and he's, his dad used to be like a Scientologist guru and crazy story. And, our stuff didn't get shared, but some new account that was just created under the name of Jesus. I went to my Twitter and I saw that the first 3 things that were shared that we put up were shared by Jesus. Like, and call it a crazy, insane coincidence, but that kind of reignited a lot of faith and warmed my heart. And I'm going to be banging my head against the wall. I guess this is what to expect. This is what we're told is going to happen. So yeah. And I was just, I'm sorry, I'm all amped up. I was in
a little too much ranting, bro.
Yeah,
back
thank you,
Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to shift a little bit of the focus onto the idea that David Patrick Carey was talking about earlier about the apotheosis of the state. That's mentioned in Hegel. And it's also a concept that was hijacked by a Talmudic rabbi named Moses Hess. In the work Rome and Jerusalem, that actually was then kind of used by Hegel and also his partner Engels, to construct this whole work and this idea of the League of the Just that was really, I think, coming about much earlier in terms of the liberal philosophy. And I think it actually comes from Hobbes, and his whole idea of the artificial man in the Leviathan. And it's weird that he kind of used this term, the Leviathan, that's seen in, in the book of Revelations and stuff. He wanted to kind of sugarcoat his secular philosophy in a religious mold And that is the hidden danger there of these concepts like the apotheosis of the state that you know, and you know, I think it's interesting that the work is called Rome and Jerusalem, because there you have those two states that kind of usurp the concept of religion most often. You know, in Rome you have the God Emperor cult, and in Jerusalem you have this whole idea of the messianic expectation. You know.
Also, we were just joined by Anna Perna, so if you want to jump in, now's your chance.
Thank
Are you
you.
not the moderator, I5?
I'm just a decent human being. It's okay. You don't have to worry about it.
Bro.
Just wanted to thank Machine Lies. He let me know about this. And are we still focusing on like the culture war, or is it past that? I've been listening.
I mean, we've kind of
it's kind of all tied together, but we're all over the place right now. What are your thoughts,
It would be
Anna?
good if you shifted back.
But to the credit of what, I don't know if it was I-Fi and Andrew or just Andrew that were saying earlier about Californians displacing themselves and being around the states. But that's a phenomenon that's happening a lot in third world countries as well. So like they're moving to places like Mexico. Costa Rica is another popular one, and like Thailand. And essentially it's like I have to give credit to that point, because it seems like a well-planned operation, because they have enough money to like move to a new place, you know, pay rent, do their whatever, like new age type activity classes and stuff, do drugs, all of that, you know. And most of them, they like work in weed, like growing weed, spend the rest of the year, like even in India, even in places like India, Rishikesh especially, you know, like everybody's a yoga teacher slash, you know, new age social justice warrior. So I had to give credit to that point, and I have to point out another thing is that they generate a secondary market that is different and closed off to from the local people just because of a language barrier. So just maybe because you're English and maybe like, you know, you speak English, or you're maybe, you know, you have a way in with the group, you charge $200 for a service that a local will provide for like $2, sometimes, okay, $20. But it's like a secondary market to which like us can't gain entry, and like the Airbnbs are dominated by these kinds of people, the booking.coms, you know, tourism. And there's a lot of, most of the third world countries like Mexico, Thailand, India, not to that much of a degree as these others like Costa Rica, they survive on tourism. So, you know, that's the majority income for them, and it trickles down to the local populace.
So yeah, and I would agree. There's even lots of global examples. Even though we started just talking about America and its culture war, you can see pretty much the exact same thing happening in other countries. And so, like in Venezuela, when the left wing took over, you saw what happened to them, and now suddenly they're knocking on our door because, you know, they like food. And in places like Argentina, you can see where they've been left wing so long that they can't figure out, you know, like how to make money or to survive as a country. So then you have people like Javier Milei come in, who's clearly right wing and is trying to like push back against it politically speaking. And so
is he right wing? I mean, it seems like he's pretty linked in with global banking, even though he's this anarchist. I mean, when you
Wasn't
look at
it just as soon as the 80s that all of Latin America were Americans from the
DPH, he checks 2 of the 3 boxes.
Okay.
I thought he was a center leftist. There's only center leftists and leftists.
He's small government and capitalist, which is 2 of the 3 boxes of right wing. And so he may not be a religious man, but he probably has other fish to fry at the moment.
Okay, so for me, that's not the right wing, though.
Yeah, that's fine. He's part of the WEF.
If he's part of the WEF, then like the WEF has Yuval Harari as like the advisor.
I mean,
Chief
he gave a pretty
advisor.
good lecture to them about how villainous and scummy they are. So again, I
No,
think
but in the end, like the WEF is and can strong arm most African countries into like adopting LGBTQ if they decide.
he's
Like it
he's
doesn't
probably
matter
not
if you give a
the
speech.
ideal right wing, but he's a lot less left wing than what Argentinians are used to. So my point was, there's easy examples to see, like North Korea, Venezuela, whatever. You take your pick. The left wing is very clear about their agenda, whether they do it through religion or culture.
Yeah, so I would disagree with you on IFI that I don't look at somebody whether they're capitalist or not. To me, it's just about traditional Christianity. So I'm looking at the moral underpinnings of their worldview, and Malay is a Kabbalist. He's I believe he's officially converting to Judaism. He's linked in with the entire global network of globalism that I would say we're ultimately in opposition to. And I think traditional Christianity promotes some sort of nationalism. And sure, you can say that he, gives lip service to that, but based on, one of the first U.S. diplomat he met with was Bill Clinton, like the week after he got elected. So I don't know. I'm not a big Malay fan myself.
Plummeted the Argentinian economy. Like since he came into office, he plummeted it. He was supposed to be the savior of Argentina, but he's actually like
I would identify
Zionist asset. I don't know if we can say this on YouTube, but he's like.
I would identify.
It's obvious.
He's absolutely a Zionist. He's full out Zionist.
Yeah.
So I would identify certain political phenomenon as the Rand Paul effect, where it sounds like you're making excuses for him on why he's not getting anything done, is because he preaches to empty rooms about why we need to fix our country and stuff like that. And so, yes, you can blame him for running Republican because obviously they are the bad guys also, but he's doing the best he can because how else are you going to change the country?
Republican?
Ron Paul's son.
Okay.
And so, obviously, we would all like to see Ron Paul as our president, but we know that's not going to happen. So Rand Paul at least tries to pretend like he's in government and make some change in our system. Obviously, he's making zero change, but maybe he feels like he's making a difference. And so, again, that's the problem. The problem is it's so overwhelmingly controlled by the left. There is no competition. There is no debate or fight pushback from the right. And so that's all I was trying to get at from the very beginning and throughout this entire discussion.
Well, I would think Malay would be perfectly indicative of your example that there is no real opposition, because I don't think he is at all.
Well, I mean, again, he's slightly less worse than like Maduro or something like that. I mean,
there isn't less worse, and I think Malay is the perfect example of what you explained of.
He's slightly less worse than Stalin or Mao. He's slightly less left wing than those people. So, good on them for at least going.
You said you don't care how slightly left wing. It's either center left wing or left wing. So it doesn't mean that he's right wing if he's slightly.
I agree. The Overton window has
then don't
completely broken down the entire ability to communicate. I agree with you. That's the point. So you can be some people like rant and just say it's all fake and I don't give a shit or whatever, and that's fine, Nadim, if that's the path you want to go with. I'm trying to reclaim the meaning of words and show that they used to have meaning, and maybe we can go back to actually, redefining the words the way they properly were used the first time. I'm just saying, like, we're so
I'm just
far
using
past.
the proper argument. I'm just using your own argument.
Okay, what's my argument? Tell me what my argument is.
There isn't right wing anymore. There's only center, left, and left.
In America,
so
I agree.
It doesn't.
Yes.
No, you said it doesn't. It's not important if we say we're right wing or not, because anyway.
I didn't say it's not important. I said don't pretend. Don't call yourself right wing when you're just another center left wing person, because you're not doing anyone any favors.
So what's your argument that we're only center left wing? So
my argument is
how does that argument
my argument is that words that have meaning. So like if you're a left wing person, great, then identify as a left wing. If you're a center left wing person, don't call yourself right wing, because you're not right wing. You're just a center left wing.
That's exactly what Malay is doing.
Oh, okay.
agree with
In the Argentinian Overton window, he is
Who cares if
slightly
it's Argentinian or
centered.
not? We're just talking about global politics. It
Your
doesn't
left hand and your right hand.
stay in the box of America.
Any guy
it works anywhere.
who goes into office destroying entire departments, saying afuera, out with all of this government bullshit. That's a
Okay,
point
that's
in my
words.
favor.
That's exactly what you're arguing against. You're saying you just don't say the words.
No,
You're just
I'm arguing
saying words
for that.
afuera,
I would
afuera,
argue we need
but he's
more
not doing anything.
Javiers in America. We need more Ron Pauls going in there and saying afuera, and doing away with the Fed.
If you bring back the
Doing
US
away with the
original,
IRS,
if you
and
bring
doing
back
away
the
with the CIA and the FBI, and doing away
you
with
bring-
the DNC and the
listen,
GOP and the deep state.
Listen. You can't argue against it because the
I
libertarian
can, and I do. That's all I do is argue against it.
So the first 100 years of America, there was this federality of the state, and you're
In the first
arguing
years of America,
for it.
we had the CIA.
Hey, I-Fi, let
the-
him finish, brother. He lets you finish. Just
first-
let him finish his point.
In the first 100 years, do you think the libertarianism isn't exactly what Millet is doing? It's
I didn't say
exactly
exactly
the same
what
point.
Millet is doing. I
Okay, but
said he's going in that
it's
direction.
close. Okay, but look how his country became after.
Yeah,
he's
look how
going to
screwed
the-
up
the-
his country is because it's completely
It-
left wing, like
it
we are
became even
becoming.
Because we
worse
have-
after he came into
because we have a
office.
separation
That's
of
what
church
I'm
and state.
arguing.
And so
so
he's like his country's like a canary for
Let me
us.
get to my point. Let me get.
Oh,
to my
sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were done. Keep going.
Okay, so the thing I'm arguing is that the whole way you're going into it is taking this libertarian view with only Christian values, but it doesn't work because we need the church's authority to bring back the Constitution doesn't have any value without those Christian values. But if we don't have a basis to put back those Christian values and efforts, then it doesn't mean anything. The Constitution doesn't mean anything
That's
without
okay.
the church or without
If you take the
an
side of the
authority
Christian
that-
nationalist, I understand that's your point of view. And like I said,
I'm
that's
not a
who I
Christian
argue
nationalist.
against.
I'm an Orthodox Christian. That doesn't Christian
You just
nationalism.
criticized
the-
me for
the
being
American way is
libertarian,
not my
though.
view.
I'm
Well, 'cause
recognizing
libertarians
The
retarded.
Christian
Well, yeah,
nationalism-
libertarian is a bit of a
Christian
retarded
nationalism-
ideology. You can't
is,
argue
yeah.
against degeneracy and then argue for libertarian.
Which part of it's retarded? Is it the
The
part
fact
where
that
that
it doesn't uphold a universal standard of morality and that it says what people do in their bedroom doesn't matter when in fact it has a ripple effect within culture, and the slippery slope is quite evident when, Now, hold on, the slippery slope is quite evident when gay marriage was legalized in 2014, and all of a sudden in 2024, 10 years later, 1 decade, we're now castrating children. And this is something that is punishable if you criticize it on social media. So
Okay, that's fine. So what all of the panel is saying is that the United States of America, when it was formed, was retarded because they were arguing
Yes.
too much about liberty and freedom and
Yes.
should have been arguing about more
Yes.
theocracies controlled by the
I think
religion
we'd
of
be in a
their
better
choice.
position than we are
Your
now,
incredulity
absolutely.
and you being
Yes,
so upset and
we-
womanly isn't an argument, dude.
Womanly. Oh, I see. I'm
Yes, you're being very
womanly because I'm
womanly.
pointing out how retarded you are and your argument that the
But
best
that's
country
not an
in the
argument,
history
it's a
of
fallacy.
mankind has proven you
It's a
wrong.
fallacy.
Not America.
And you're a whiny little woman bitching about it, and you're in the greatest country
Doesn't-
that
doesn't make
human
our view less
history
right.
has ever had.
It doesn't
And
make our view
that's
less correct.
because of our libertarian freedoms, and we can still maintain Christian morals and capitalist economies. So
It
I
doesn't-
understand why
it
you guys
doesn't-
get fussy about it because you have to have daddy.
But we gave
you
an
know,
argument.
you're telling
you're just
how to live your lives,
Hold on,
and that's
hold on.
fine.
Doing
That's fine. I understand, and that's exactly
We
the
gave
same argument.
arguments. We gave arguments. You're not giving.
Hold on. Neither one. You're totally contradicting yourself when you're talking about that the golden age of America was only lasted for. Okay, he's out. Good.
Whew.
All right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Recap.
not
that
arguments,
libertarianism
arguments.
is
We're
really
really
not
get
arguments.
some people get really
We're-
soft when you criticize libertarianism. I mean,
we're
how-
giving
Don't touch the golden
arguments.
calf.
Yeah, for me that is, it makes
We're giving
total
arguments
nonsense
and he's
because
spewing out
libertarianism
his-
does not hold to any sort of objective morality, and so how can
Right.
one like I-Fi argue against the rampant degeneracy in the United States and claim to be a cultural Protestant Christian and that we're a Christian nation, and at the same time say that we're no longer a Christian nation? I mean, how does that make sense? The only way that it worked was before we were, in a sense, multicultural, and the majority of this country came from Europe and had a cultural ethos and they had different forms of Protestantism and Catholicism, but generally speaking, they were united by a shared national ethos. This has totally been destroyed, and this comes part and parcel due to libertarianism and secularism.
Yeah, I mean, his entire time he's been, raging against degeneracy, and the left is doing that, and it's terrible. But his whole worldview of libertarianism fosters that and lets it grow. It's the soil that the liberal stuff, the left stuff grows in. So if he wants to get rid of it, he has to get rid of his libertarianism that's fostering it.
Absolutely.
And I think libertarianism made him a fallacious human being. He became that. He doesn't even give an argument. We give him an argument, and he calls us weird. So.
What are you saying? Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I was gonna.
Well, it's just you ask him for an argument.
Yeah, go ahead. You guys. Go
sorry.
Ahead.
Yeah, sorry. You asked him for an argument. It was just the two quote way of, "Are you saying that we should behead people in a theocracy?" It's like that.
No.
Okay, bro. Like you yelling isn't an argument. I'm just asking questions.
He's just picking and choosing. He's just picking and choosing from Christianity what he likes and taking out the important stuff.
Let me make a point here. To Born, our pagan panelist here, has showed so much better demeanor than the libertarian who rage quit. So, even though we have opposing worldviews to Born, God bless you, brother, for at least being able to, withstand a difference of opinions.
Of course, man. Always love that.
Yeah.
Could we bring it down to like a little bit of?
Go wherever you want to go, Mr. Westbrook.
Just to point out his the worldview he just used. And I see this in a lot of Americans. They love, especially in the supposed conservative world, they love using Christian ethics and Christian values that help society, but they're not willing to go down the actual suffering of Christian nationalism. They're scared to openly defy feminism. They're scared to openly defy those views that aren't Christian views and that aren't going to help any state. So that's exactly what he did. They're scared. They're like, well, how dare you defy the Constitution or the fathers of America? But
I agree with you.
Why can't we argue that the basis of the U.S. is based on a false?
There's a paradoxical reality about like on the subject of secularism. Norway, which I come from, most secular country in the world. Who is upholding conservatism in Norway? Muslims. Like Muslims are,
which is tied to a religious faith, which is our point about why secularism fails. Because if you have a transcendent ideology, those people are willing to die for their beliefs much more so than any person who promotes secularism. Yeah.
And nowadays, more and more of the secular Norwegian people are realizing that they're depressed as fuck, and they want a faith with some actual kick in it. And all these evangelicals are just a bunch of people trying to get out of jail. And the Muslims are actually standing on shit because they have to work their ass off and deal with the repression of the state. So it's really a fucking 3-layer cake there. Because then you have the cops.
That's why the only solution to both Islam and secularism is the Orthodox Church. That's our argument, and we have basis for this argument.
Right, and to Born's point, when we look at the Scandinavian countries, who are typically, if you look at whatever it means, but if you look at polls on the most secular countries, typically it is Norway, Finland, Sweden, and look at what they're doing. I don't know if it's as bad in Finland, but I know it's bad in Sweden in regards to look at the secular countries in America that they're literally destroying themselves. And whether people want to argue it's for, economic capitalist endeavors because of the population collapse, or it's globalist intentions for internal strife and the collapse of their nations to build a centralized global economic structure, whatever it may be, we cannot avoid to look at the problem of secularism, that every single secular country, America, Canada, Scandinavia, Northern, Western Europe, they're all self-destructing right now.
Yeah, well, I think that's linked to actually a much bigger question than industrial policy and neglect by elites. I think it's linked to a fundamental spiritual conflict between what you would call night and day or something like this. And what's happening in Scandinavia is an insidious attempt at warfare, essentially.
So may I ask you, the gentleman from Norway, so where does your native rich spiritual cosmology fall in the minds of the youth? Like where does that fall in terms of identity for them?
For the youth,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
like
the youth
kids,
of Norway.
kids have an intuitive understanding of all of it. Like it's never left. Like that's something that gets
No,
beaten
but
out of people
since
through
you mentioned like
and Muslims and Norwegian
people
kids are
that
both
were practicing Islam were more conservative, and then the other religion that you mentioned was like Protestant evangelism. So I'm wondering, like you in Norway, like you have how would you describe the
well, I'm not a
indigenous?
Protestant evangelist. Yeah, the indigenous, like the Muslims are integrating quite well into that. Is the weird thing as well. So because there's a reason why Christians call Muslims heathens. Like it's just
Well, I think it's interesting because yeah, I think it's interesting because I live here near Dearborn, and you see that the second and third generation Muslims, they don't pray, they drink, they go to the club, so they're not really so really what is transformed about them is that they're basically following a secular lifestyle. And also the reason why they're being imported into the West, right, and then opposing the secular values of the West, they don't really kind of see what they're doing to themselves, is that is because of the notion of universalism within the secular Western society, right, who's actually exporting the values into those societies that have more traditional structures, like for example, like Arab countries and all of those countries, if you look at their TV shows and stuff, they're dealing with liberal propaganda from the UN and from the International Monetary Fund and all of that type of stuff as well. Like a lot of the news channels, like in my country where I was born, Pakistan, they're now, like now I'm an American citizen, but I was born overseas, and and a lot of the news channels and the shows are actually produced by companies like ABC and Viacom and all of that type of stuff. They own considerable companies, so these are international companies that don't necessarily operate, beholden to anybody's cultural standards.
Right.
On the point of left and right, though, McDonald's, the bar, playing pool and smoking cigarettes, when was that actually inherently left wing? Because if you look at Soviet Russia, the degeneracy was seen as the right wing scourge of the capitalist West. Like they idolized the homestead, more or less. I mean,
well, the problem is really the techno liberalism that's developing in the cities. The cities are the hub of two things. They're the hub of international trade, and they're the hub of technological innovation. You see these places like Silicon Valley and these types of technological hubs. So the actual situation is that these are the places that create these international markets and seek to usurp culture. See, what happens in the cities, and this is a thing that's happened since ancient times, is that the cities develop an intellectual class, and they get infected with ideas of all sorts of cosmopolitan philosophies, all sorts of arcane religious practices that lead to occultism and perennialism and these types of forms of syncretism. It's the cities where these things develop, and it's because of the expansion of the state that these cities develop as sort of international intellectual centers, and they kind of corrode the state from the inside. So really, the danger also is people returning and leaving the city and going to a sort of pastoralism where they kind of become like sitting ducks, and they give away their power, because the objective factor of power in our age is the technological means, that are employed by the state, and that.
Don't you think the concept of Abrahamism is precisely to build cities? Don't you think the logic of Abrahamism is
No. Abraham had to leave the city and go to the wilderness. So
Right.
I mean, that sounds totally off.
And historically, Christianity spread amongst the people that lived more rurally. And even in America, if you look at who has the most faithful disposition towards the faith, it's people that are outside cities. Metropolitan areas tend to corrode traditional values.
Yeah, in the modern age, yeah, but like
I would say even historically.
Because like why would the pastoral societies choose to adopt indoor religion to begin with if the aim wasn't to construct buildings,
I don't see the connection there.
Like why would there be a desire to change from, say, steppe nomad to indoor city dwelling farmer people?
But those are city dwelling and farming are two separate things.
Well, farming is the city dwelling of when
agriculture, though, produces more food, which allows more people, which then creates cities eventually.
Exactly. Of course,
I might have
the
to
original Christianity is.
I might have to hop off. I just want to do like a small statement before I leave. Just to like kind of answer the question that was asked in the first place, that if we're winning the culture war or not. In my view, I think currently we're not, but I have hope in orthodoxy. I think we should still fight. We should still be proud of our faith and try to live in secular societies, but still keep your own values to yourself, and if possibly try to spread them as much as you can in a non-prideful way, of course. And that's it. Thank you, DPH, for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. And we're going to wrap up things. I do want to address, George made a good point. Historically, it spread in the cities, pagans. Yeah, when I made my point, I was thinking more like the Renaissance period. So when we're looking at Europe, when we're looking at, the city of Florence, for example, like a lot of innovation began in the larger metropolitan cities. But yes, at the very beginning, in regards to the Roman Empire, a lot of the faith began in the cities. And as Ortho Ben highlighted, it's because cities had walls and it had to do with security and everything else. But anyway, just acknowledge George was right there. I was kind of thinking more in regards to the Renaissance, moving into the Enlightenment period.
Of course.
Just one thing, Mr. Westford, he was on. He's streaming. If you're open to raiding anyone, I think he would love it. Just if you're.
I don't. I'll see if I can find him. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, anybody have any final comments before we hop off here? I appreciate all you guys jumping on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for the time,
brother David Patrick Harry. Yeah,
of course.
You have a blessed day, and I hope I talk to you soon, my friend. Yep.
You as well. God bless, brother. And I appreciate you guys hopping on that even have difference of opinions, just being respectful, I appreciate that. You guys are always welcome to come on and share your insights.
For sure. I'll pray for you, my friend. Thank you.
You as well. God bless, bro.
Blessings.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
I did want to
go ahead,
Ortho. Andrew. You mentioned the book Woke Army. Is that right?
I think Andrew's.
And I'm very glad to be a part of it. There.
There you go. Andrew, he asked you about the book Woke Army.
Oh, yeah, that's by what's her name? Numani is Asra Numani, and she connects the jihadi movement here to funding and networks with the CCP. And that's
okay.
I think it's getting attention because she must have already been in the cool kids group, but that's the kind of stuff that we've been trying to point out for, well, very, very directly for about a year now. And Yeah, it's all over the place, like the National Lawyers Guild with Venezuela and the tribes and the DAPL protests.
Yeah, I saw
But
some of the things you linked in the chat as well. Believe it or not, you mentioned James Lindsay earlier. I actually speak with him regularly, and I was actually going to introduce him to some of the stuff once I go through it. I think
Who's
he
that?
might be interested in James Lindsay.
James Lindsay.
James Lindsay. Oh yeah. I'll send you a. Well, I have a bar in. Here's the thing, and this is in confidence between all of us. Is before I got involved with Ari, I was going to work on a book where I extracted Lifton's characteristics of cults, etc., because he'd been talking about like the left as a cult. And I lived with a cargo cult and researched cults as part of my grad school stuff, and had buffets categories. And I sent him like, hey, I'm working on this. I have a place in Knoxville. We should talk. You can come to my bar. And he'd never mentioned anything about Lifton. And all of a sudden, he starts delivering a bunch of my undergrad lectures for like the past year from the, and he never got back to me. And I'm convinced that he saw that source in the letter that I sent him, looked up who Lifton was, and that's the same thing that Gonzalez from the Heritage Foundation did. So I obviously like not gonna do shit. I'm sorry I'm so amped up. I was in a head-on collision and the other guy like a few feet away from me. I didn't see it, thank God. I initially thought he was shooting at me. I ran. I've been without transportation, like stuck in the house for that happened after I was already home for 3 days. So for almost 2 weeks now, I've been kind of cooped up going batty, and it's been about a week since that happened.
It's all good. I don't mind the rants as long as it's TOS appropriate because of YouTube.
Oh, because I said the thing. I didn't. Yeah, but
I know, but just the way the AI is crazy, bro. I've had so many streams taken down, and I've been, I just got through another. So right now, I don't have any strikes on the channel. I just had one that finally got taken off. So I'm just always leery, dude. YouTube. Yeah, YouTube, they don't even tell you. They'll just say, you violated this and now your stuff's down and you can't stream for a week and you have a strike on your channel. So we just always have to play nice with the TOS because
apologies for that. I wasn't even thinking about it because there was no nefarious intent.
No, I understand. It's not like our members meetings where we can say anything.
Yeah, if it's going out over the airwaves, then
yeah,
kind of terrifying.
But anyways, you guys have final comments before we hop off here?
Shit. Oh, there was so few of us. I said that crap about Lindsay, and that's on the end of this now.
I actually DM him pretty frequently on Twitter.
No!
Quite a lot.
I
wouldn't say anything like that to him.
Yeah,
I just thought it was very interesting. I thought
about 1,400 people saw it.
Anybody I talk crap about anywhere, I'm 1,000% willing to sit across from the table. The mistakes that have piled up in my life, I'm in no place to point fingers, and I'm willing to forgive anything, but that suspicion is there. So anyway,
gotcha. Understandable.
All good.
Understandable.
Well, Ortho Blaze, I appreciate you hopping on, brother. This is your first time, right?
Yeah, it's my first time. I've watched like tons of your streams going back a couple years and whatnot, and I've just figured I'd finally just decide to come on and
I appreciate you hopping on, man. And in the future, if there's any more open panels and you're free, please join.
Please tell Lindsay to come to my he's got an open invite to come to my kava bar in Knoxville. The intelligence operation is being handled in the basement, and I'd be more than happy to give him a copy of my book, International Castrochavismo.
I'll come to your kava bar. I live just outside Nashville.
I'm Knoxville.
I live just outside Nashville myself.
All right, I was gonna take a trip to Nashville next week, but now my leg is shot, and I don't have a car. And my partner's Volvo can't come here to pick me up. He's got like a
name your kava bar, and Ortho Blaze might be able to meet you there.
That'll be online, and then people can do evil things. I don't
You're on
know.
Twitter, right?
Well,
Yes, Mad
just type it in the
Social
private
Science.
chat here.
DM
Just
me
type,
on Twitter, and
or Andrew,
I'll
Andrew, just type it in the private chat so only
Oh.
Orthoblaze and me can see it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
What is your at on Twitter?
And let me
Real
just
quick.
address a couple
Yeah,
super
put that in
chats. We had a
chat.
communist says the future is conservative communist versus liberal fascist. Totally disagree with that. That same person, although I appreciate the support, Millie Plateau says that Zyuganov is a Christian communist. Biden is a liberal fascist. Russia is remixing Christianity and communism. I disagree with that. China is cultural conservative communist. I mean, I guess to some degree I would agree with that. And then Millie says cultural Marxism is Trotskyism, not Marxism. Well, certainly neocons are Trotskyites, but I don't think you can't be an Orthodox Christian and support communism. Those are mutually exclusive ideologies. So I disagree with the idea that we're going to the future is Christian communism. And over on the Streamlabs, iPack Arts threw in $10, said, God bless. Thank you so much, iPack Arts. And on the Dono chat, $10 came in from Blue Skittle that said, hey, Biden is the most popular president in history, Jack. Appreciate that, Blue Skittle. God bless you, brother. And anyways, with that, I am going to hop off. I'll be back Wednesday with Father Peter Heers. We'll be talking about Orthodox prophecies and end times theology. So that should be a lot of fun. So I will Andrew's Kava Bar. They found it. Andrew's Kava Bar. No, I'm kidding. All right. I will see you guys on Wednesday. And as always, until then, God bless.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you.